across borders, whether they be geographical, political, linguistic, or disciplinary. In the world we inhabit today, conversations between disciplines, such as the humanities and social sciences, are not just desirable, they are essential. Together, they offer insights into the complexities of identity, representation, memory, and the very idea of border, a concept that has never been static, but is constantly being redefined by global migration, digital technologies, political shifts, and cultural flows. Our theme, Cultures in Conversation, is a timely reminder of the importance of interdisciplinary engagements. Whether we examine cultures through literature, art, performance, media, or social practice, we must ask, how do ideas travel? How do they change in translation? And what are the ethical responsibilities of scholars when engaging with narratives that cross borders of nation, community, and media? I take this opportunity to thank our collaborators, the Center for Humanities and Social Sciences Research, the IQAC of Maharaja Srischandra College, and the Society for Indian Graphic Narratives for their vision and dedication in bringing this seminar to life. A special word of appreciation goes to all our distinguished speakers from across the globe who have graciously joined us today to share their expertise and perspectives. To our students and young teachers and young researchers, I extend a warm invitation. Let today be an inspiration for you to think beyond boundaries, to question received wisdom, and to embrace the possibilities of collaborative scholarship, which is very, very important in today's world. As we embark on this day of learning and exchange, let us remember that borders do not merely separate, they also connect. It is in these liminal spaces of connection that we often find the most fertile ground for dialogue, creativity, and transformation. With these thoughts, I hereby declare the one-day international seminar on cultures in conversation, humanities and social sciences across borders open. I wish the seminar all success and look forward to the rich discussions that lie ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Srischandra, for your warm welcome and insightful words. Your message sets the tone for a productive and engaging conference. So today we have two keynote speakers. The first speaker we have is Dr. Richard Scott Noakes. Dr. Richard Noakes specializes in medieval literature and founder of Written Publishing. He specializes in medieval manuscripts, modern medievalism, and digital publishing. After completing his BA in English and Political Science in 1992, Noakes taught English as a second language in South Korea. In 1993, he established the American Studies program at the University in Louisiana and taught Canadian literature at Louisiana Christian College. Noakes came to Troy University in 2003 after earning his PhD. In 2003, he was a Fulbright High Scholar researching the Maya epic in Guatemala. In 2007, he was a regional finalist for the President's Commission on White House Fellowships. In 2011, he founded Written Publishing, producing peer-reviewed academic works of medieval scholarship. He has written edited, edited and published dozens of peer-reviewed articles, chapters, and books. Over to you, sir.
First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. I didn't know everyone who was going to be involved today, and I was really delighted to see that the speaker following me is Julius Bamataraki, a friend and colleague, and so I'm really delighted to see that. Also, looking down the list of all the various presentations that we have, there are many of them I'd love to see. I will say, it's midnight here, almost midnight here. It will be midnight when I'm done, and I promised my family I'd be home by 3 p.m. So those of you who are later in the program, I'm afraid I will miss your presentations. But please, I do hope that you. I do hope that you understand that I'm here. I'm gone not out of choice, but really rather out of self-preservation. Give me 1 second here to pull up. I'll get a little PowerPoint for you here. Not going to let me share the way I want it to, but that's okay. I'll make it work with you. Thank you for being patient with me. And I need to share that screen. My apologies. All right. So I assume it's being shared properly. Please let me know if it isn't, because I've had to close my screen for this.
Yes, the presentation is visible on the screen. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. So I want to talk today about artificial intelligence and the threat of algorithmic capture in humanities and social sciences. And so, as a medieval scholar, I love stories. This is an older than medieval story, it's an ancient story, but I want to begin with this ancient story that's also urgent and contemporary, and that is the story of the Tower of Babel. So in the Bible, in Genesis, humanity united to build this tower, reaching the heavens, speaking one language with shared purpose. God, seeing this unity as a threat, scattered them across the earth by confusing their tongues, by making them speak different languages. What was meant to unite humanity, and in a sense challenge heaven, instead became the source of our greatest divisions. Now today we stand at another Tower of Babel moment. Artificial intelligence was supposed to be our universal translator, breaking down language barriers and democratizing access to knowledge. Just as in that ancient story, our technological ambition threatens to fragment humanities in ways that we are really just only beginning to understand. So I want to introduce you to a concept that I call algorithmic capture. This occurs when people's thinking becomes limited by the biases and blind spots of the AI systems that filter and shape the information they receive. Whether they receive that information through their research, or they receive that information by the curation of the things that they're looking at. Now, before I get into the details about what's new with algorithmic capture itself, it actually isn't an entirely new idea. So Francis Bacon, the man on the left with a very fine frill and very fine hat, he's often known as the father of the scientific method. And he warned us about what he called the idols of the tribe, how our thinking becomes constrained by the perspective of those around us. So a really famous example in my country, in the United States, of this is an apocryphal quote that is attributed to a film critic in the famous New Yorker magazine, Pauline Kael. And In 1972, President Nixon won a landslide victory. It was not even close. And she famously said something along the lines of, "I don't know how Nixon won. I don't know anybody who voted for him." Now, by huge majorities, Americans have voted for him. Yet someone who was supposed to be a cultural critic did not know a single person who had. Now, while her actual quote was more nuanced and self-aware than the one that gets passed around by her, I think this captures how media ecosystems and other kinds of ecosystems can create bubbles that limit our understanding of the world. Now, I publicly identified this as a generational threat back in 2019, I think, when I was speaking at Yunnan Normal University in China on American media as the fourth estate. During the Q&A period there, a Chinese student asked me what I thought would be the biggest challenge for her generation. Now, even then, that was before ChatGPT had made. I was using AI in its earlier states back in 2018, 2019. But that was long before ChatGPT had made AI ubiquitous so that everyone could use it. And at that point, I pointed to algorithmic capture as the defining threat. Not as a threat, but as the defining threat for this generation. So I'm stating this as firmly as I can. But in those days, this was before, I wasn't really talking about artificial intelligence. I was really talking about the way recommendation algorithms on apps and search engines were already shaping worldviews. So my argument today is that AI amplifies those existing patterns of algorithmic capture while creating an entirely new forms of cultural isolation. And if we're not careful, we risk building not one Tower of Babel with many, each trapping entire populations into narrow intellectual worlds. Okay, so let me start with some stark statistics that I think illustrate this idea of data dominance. English composes about 46% of Common Crawl data. We can round that off to about half. The primary training source for major language models. So think about that. Nearly half of what we're teaching AI comes from English language sources, despite English being native to only 5% of the global population. With that doesn't just come English language, but all kinds of presuppositions that come out of the English-speaking world. This isn't just some quirk of the internet. It's the foundation of how these AI systems themselves understand the world. Common Crawl made up over 80% of GPT-3 training tokens, and 64% of surveyed large language models from 2019 to 2023 use Common Crawl derivatives. In other words, and mostly they still do. I just don't have research to kind of show, to really look at that. So we're essentially training our most powerful AI systems on a fundamentally skewed sample of human knowledge, which really just comes out of a very few countries and very few cultures. Aside from that, the practical consequences are immediate and costly. So GPT-2's tokenizer uses up to 15 times more tokens for some languages. So tokens are really the way that these AI systems see language and see the world. The more tokens, the longer it takes to process it, the harder it is to do, thus the more expensive it is. Even for a free product, it slows it down and does end up costing more money. So even when we have some really widespread languages, like Portuguese and German, which is much more widespread on the internet than many other languages you might imagine, even those require 50% more tokens than English. So that means that non-English users literally pay 50% more for the same content. Or if you're providing that content, you're providing it at 50% more cost, even if you're providing it for free. I say non-English users here, but the truth is anyone wanting to access a non-English source, but non-English users entering their prompts not in English, we have the same problem. So we've created a system where linguistic diversity comes with a financial penalty. This wasn't done on purpose. It's simply that is what is mostly on the internet. But the deeper problem is one that I call the Ouroboros effect. This is named after the ancient symbol of a serpent eating its own tail. It's called an Ouroboros. So our AI systems are consuming their own outputs, effectively creating self-reinforcing cycles of bias. So here's how it works. You've got English-dominant training data that creates English-biased outputs. These outputs then become part of the training data for the next generation of models, making the bias even more entrenched. Each generation of training moves us further from linguistic and cultural diversity toward an increasingly narrow paradigm of what counts as authoritative knowledge or official knowledge. And as humans, human users become more reliant on AI, we're losing our ability to distinguish good outputs from bad ones. AI hallucinations are becoming established facts before anyone catches them. Just this month, so I wanted to draw something very recently, just this month, on May 15th, so we're talking 2 weeks or less ago. King Features, which is a very, very, very big syndicate in America, newspaper syndicate, published a summer reading list of the 15 hot titles for the season. 15 hot titles you should read. The problem was only 5 of them were real books. 10 were complete AI fabrications. Before anyone caught the error, major newspapers, including the Chicago Tribune, Philadelphia Inquirer, other papers of that level, had republished the list. Thousands of readers are now searching for books that don't exist, recommended by systems that can't tell the difference between reality and their own hallucinations. This is algorithmic capture in action, not just limiting what we know, but accidentally feeding us false information presented with the authority of established experts. So now let me explain how AI is creating information silos and echo chambers at an unprecedented scale. Information silos occur when people only receive news and ideas from sources that confirm what they already believe, creating isolated bubbles of thought. These silos naturally lead to echo chambers, spaces where people only hear their own opinions, reflected back to them by others who think the same way, reinforcing existing beliefs without challenging them. Or, as the father of the scientific method, Francis Bacon called it, the idol of the tribe. Now we're seeing this play out through the rise of national AI models and digital sovereignty initiatives. China's DeepSeek R1 offers ChatGPT level performance, allegedly, at a much lower cost compared to GPT-4. Now, I don't want to get too deep into that. There's a lot of question about whether that's true or not. I suspect it's not, but they are certainly trying for their own cheaper national model that's focused on their own languages and probably the dominant Han culture. Russia has developed GigaChat Max, focused specifically on Russian language and literature, culture. The European Union announced a 200 billion euro AI continent action plan to create a sovereign AI infrastructure. And as I believe most of this audience knows, India launched its India AI mission to build indigenous models that cover the 22 official languages. Now, I want to be clear. These initiatives address legitimate concerns: data privacy, cultural sensitivity, and political independence from foreign tech dominance are real issues that deserve serious attention. But there are unintended consequences we need to acknowledge. We're creating separate information ecosystems that fragment the global knowledge exchange. Region-specific models reinforce local perspectives while cutting off opportunities for cross-pollination of ideas, collaboration, and cultural exchange. Just a slide there, my apologies. So let me give a personal example of how this fragmentation already affects academic work. Recently, I attempted to coordinate an international research project across 4 countries. Not 40 countries, 4 countries. We had to abandon it, not because of intellectual disagreement or funding issues, but because we couldn't find a messaging app that wasn't banned in one of those cultures. Email just proved too cumbersome for real-time collaboration. If basic communication tools face such fragmentation, imagine the barriers we'll face if AI systems are trained on entirely separate national data sets. This has broader implications for everything we care about as scholars. Scientific research and collaboration becomes more difficult when researchers in different countries are working with AI assistants to bring out different foundational assumptions. Every culture has its own cultural presuppositions. When we train an AI on those cultural presuppositions, that AI adopts them. It is the only worldview that it has. So because of this, literary and artistic traditions remain siloed when translation systems can't bridge cultural context they were never trained to understand. And when I say translation systems here, I don't literally just mean going from one language to another, but going from one culture to another, one set of presuppositions to another, even, for some of us, one academic culture to another. I'm going to be spending some time next year in Uganda, and I spent a lot of time a few days ago discussing with colleagues there the appropriate way in academic culture to address people. These are real concerns. Policy solutions that might develop in one region will never reach others because the AI systems mediating information flow don't recognize their relevance. I liken this to the point in Europe, North Africa, and Western Asia with the collapse of the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire is often seen as a time, as a place of great culture and technological innovation, but in fact it was not. The truth is, it really stifled innovation. But because of the road system, one innovation in one area would immediately go to the rest of the Roman world. Well, when the Roman Empire collapses those ties from North Africa, Europe and Western Asia, when you see that happening, what immediately happens is you see a flowering of all kinds of innovations, but those innovations stay where they are. Right? And so we have these, and so because of that, the Middle Ages, before the modern era, were a time of really, really great innovation, but they were not widespread. So innovation in one community would not be shared with another community, simply because you didn't have the infrastructure to do that. So we're trapped between two possibly negative possibilities, right? One being something like the Roman Empire, where everything that we learn is immediately transferred to everyone else. However, learning is limited. This is very important for scholars. On the other hand, with the siloed echo chambers, national ones, we can have ones where there are great and very important innovations in different areas. But those innovations, because they exist only in the echo chambers, only the nationally sovereign AI systems, do not get shared with people in other communities, including scholars like us. You can immediately see how this would have an effect on research, how this can affect, even before we get to things like publishing research, just our very thoughts themselves. So we're not just facing the prospect of different languages, we're facing prospect of different realities, each one seemingly complete and authoritative within its own ecosystem that seems to be authoritative. All right, so what we stand to lose. We're looking at algorithmic capture at a scale that could lock entire populations into narrow thought paradigms, leading to intellectual impoverishment and a dangerous narrowing of human knowledge, creativity, and competency. And a body like this today, these are the things that we are worried about in the humanities and social sciences. So let's think about problem-solving capacity. One interesting thing is that although people will often forget that, well, we'll have fewer, when we have more people, resources will become scarcer and thus more expensive. In fact, that has never been what happened. What's happened with every generation is resources become cheaper and more abundant, despite there being more people drawing on them. This is because the only resource that truly matters is human creativity and innovation. Every single person born has the potential to contribute solutions that we've never imagined. By siloing people into separate algorithmic worlds and capturing them in their own little sovereign algorithmic states, we limit those opportunities for cross-cultural innovation and collaboration. We're already seeing academic erosion as a preview of this broader algorithmic capture. Students increasingly submit AI-generated work without understanding its content. Now, some do this, some do this dishonestly. They have a class where they're not supposed to use AI and they use it anyway. But I also have classes in which they're allowed to use AI, but students will fail those assignments because they've used AI, but they don't actually understand what the AI has produced, and they don't understand why they're receiving a failing grade on this. They're losing the ability to critique sources, evaluate arguments, or engage meaningfully with ideas. When I ask students to explain their own submitted work, often they can't because they never actually engaged with the thinking process that created it. We are just a couple of years into the advent of AI that's available to everyone in the world, and already we're seeing this effect. I spent some time talking to colleagues when I was in China recently. They had the same problems. I talked with a colleague in Turkey. They have the same problems, and I bet that you have the same problems in every country that's represented here today. This is not just about academic integrity. This is about the atrophy of critical thinking skills across an entire generation. If we can't recognize and critique the biases in AI outputs, how can we hope to escape their limiting effects on our intellectual development? Or, for those of us who are scholars, the limiting effects on our ability to really grapple with the ideas that we need to. Now, I don't want to just leave us with problems. There are some paths forward, but none of them offer one simple, easy solution that will fix everything. One is our potential technical approaches. So I'll just name one that is commonly talked about. It would not solve every problem, for sure. It's not even certain that it's internationally possible. It certainly isn't at the moment. But is the kind of thing that might help us. And this is called federated learning. For those of you who don't know this because you are in humanities and social sciences and not in the technical fields, this is a kind of machine learning technique where you have multiple devices or organizations, and they collaboratively train shared models by processing data locally and only sharing the model updates, not the raw data, with the central server. So in other words, imagine that we didn't have these national models that we're building, but instead we were trying to build a global model. I actually don't think that's the future, but we'll imagine we're doing that. What would happen then is, as the models there, as India AI missions model is being trained, that training then gets shared with whatever the global AI or these big AI systems that we're talking about, or even just other AI systems, gets shared with them, but not the data. So the things that you have said to it personally, your own comments, the spreadsheets, the data that you have entered into it, that would not go into it. But the training itself would go into it. And so that can preserve the data privacy and security, but it also enables collaboration, allows the systems to learn from other systems without actually seeing the data system. So this could maintain data sovereignty, right? Which is important to a lot of countries for a variety of reasons. It could really improve multilingual training methods. So that problem that we have with non-English languages just being more expensive to process, the more the systems are trained on systems that have used it, the more efficient they will become in other languages as well, thus kind of eliminating this unintended tax on not using an AI in English. And of course, create better cross-cultural translation systems so that an AI will kind of understand better what you want. So you may notice that AI systems, their limitations tend to be governed by what is preferred by a very particular, we'll call it a thought leader class in the English-speaking world, and already the presuppositions tend to be things. We could potentially, by doing something like a federated system, have the benefits of a diverse, culturally sensitive AI without this fragmentation. But you and I here, we can't control whether governments or corporations adopt federated learning approaches. Unless someone here is much better connected than I am, you can't force this upon our governments. And it appears that they're going the other direction anyway. What can we do here is we can control what our behavior as scholars and educators. So the most obvious thing is to strengthen academic exchange programs like this one we're doing right here. This is so important. It's always been important, but today it's more important than ever that we have these conversations to maintain cross-cultural dialogue and collaborative scholarship in this era of digital fragmentation. Our role, our duty, I would argue, is to remain alert to the threat of algorithmic monoculture and to inform our colleagues, our students, and the general public about these risks that we see. So even if balkanized AI monocultures develop, we, those of us who are scholars in these fields, need to be positioned to identify and critique them. This requires us maintaining intellectual connections across cultural and national boundaries that AI systems might inadvertently sever. In other words, just simply meeting one another, talking to one another face to face, or with a virtual system like this where we are both live at the same time, nothing is being curated by an algorithm. Out of this, I can say anything that I want at any point. That is a very valuable thing and is becoming more and more valuable. All right, so you might think from my warnings that I'm anti-artificial intelligence. Nothing could be further from the truth. I'm the director of Troy University's AI Forward Initiative, and I spent considerable time helping other universities, schools, businesses, civic organizations, all sorts of groups adapt to our AI system world. Along with my colleague Anna Orlovsky, I developed our AI Forward composition curriculum, our writing curriculum for freshmen, which we implemented university-wide back in 2024. So we already by 2024, we made that standard for our curriculum. My point today is not AI is bad, and therefore we should take a hammer to any GPU we see. Rather, it's that if we want a positive AI future, we need to understand and actively counter two specific threats: the dominance of English language monoculture, which is one threat, and the emergence of a balkanized nation-specific monocultures. Algorithmic capture in either case would impoverish human knowledge and creativity. The first one is the Roman Empire, where everything is connected, but innovation is stifled. The other one is the Middle Ages, where innovation flourishes, but it's kept siloed in executive places. But if we can avoid building AI towers of battle, if we can maintain connections across the digital divides being created, we can erect instead what I think of as AI pillars of Ashoka. Emperor Ashoka's pillars stood individually across his empire, each reflecting the local language and customs, that together they unite diverse people under shared principles. And that's really where I hope ultimately we can go with artificial intelligence in all of our fields. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Noakes, for interestingly enlightening us about the potential of AI in augmenting humanities and social sciences research. So we shall now proceed on the second keynote speaker, Julius Bamutaraki. Julius is an assistant lecturer and examinations coordinator in the Department of Literature and Film Studies, Kiamboko University, Kampala, Uganda. His teaching and research areas include African literature, especially the image of Africa in the African novel, Shakespeare, classical literature, and medieval literature. So today he will be presenting on the topic of female agency and patriarchal subversion in the African novel, reading Lola Shonoyen's The Secret Lives of Baba Saji's Wives. Please join us in welcoming Julius Bamuturaki.